All righty, guys. Hope everyone is having a good day today. Very excited about this one because I'm actually going to get to learn a few things and ask some questions. Today, we are joined by Mr. David Lucier I believe, gosh, no, maybe our second Mike Force veteran, but he was with the 2 Corps Mike Force. He served out of Kontum mostly with A-204. And I'm really considering, like I said, I don't know too much of his history and don't want to mess anything up here, which I already did. I think I said B-24 instead of B-22. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Mr. David. Let him introduce himself to y'all, and we'll get started with questions and go from there. So, Mr. David, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thanks, bud. I really appreciate this opportunity, especially to open it up to, an audience that may otherwise not have known or know about the Mike Force, or the Mobile Strike Force is what it was called in short for Mike Force. And we were pretty obscure. There wasn't a whole lot of us. We didn't get a whole lot of press. Nobody talked about us much. And it wasn't that we were doing super secret things. It's just that we were busy doing those things. And so, we had just enough time to be out in the field, do whatever we needed to do, come back, kind of lick our wounds, resupply, retrain, and go right back out. So, that's one of the reasons I'm very, very appreciative of this opportunity. So my name is David Lucier. I entered the United States Army at the ripe old age of 19, and 19 in about a month. So, and that was a strategic decision because my plan was to somehow or other get into special forces. And so, but the rule was that you had to be at least 20 years old when you graduated training and ready to go to an operational group. And so I turned 19 in January, mid-January, and so I went into the Army a month later, mid-February, and I kind of calculated what my training cycle was going to be, and that was before anything was really formal. At the time, there was no X-ray program, so that you could enlist for special forces. The best most they could guarantee at the time upon entering was you could go to airborne school. All things worked out, and it was real easy to get infantry. So I went to airborne infantry training. I went to basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, and then moved on to Fort Gordon, where there was an airborne infantry AIT. And after that, following that, we all went to jump school. And from jump school, once it looked like we were going to graduate, there were a few of us that were picked out by the Special Forces recruiting folks. And they contacted us, gathered us up, put us in a room, gave us a brief summary of what Special Forces was, and wanted to know if that was something that we wanted to pursue. And of course, my hand was up halfway through the sentence. So off to Fort Bragg we went. There were just a few of us. Everybody else in that airborne class all went to Vietnam with airborne units. And so there was nobody was kidding anybody else. And so when we were at Fort Gordon that summer, the news was coming in that, a lot of these airborne units were getting their asses kicked. So it wasn't a very, pretty picture. But a few of us went up to Fort Bragg. We were bused up to Fort Bragg from Fort Benning, and we started our cycle. And so we were divided up. I think we took a few more tests. They said, hey, looks like you got the aptitude to be a medic, maybe not the attitude, but I certainly had the aptitude. And so I went through their medical school. All told, from stepping into the Army until I finished and graduated, it was almost a 2-year cycle. And so when we graduated, A few of us got assigned to the 7th Special Forces Group, which was there at Fort Bragg, the ones with the red flashes, solid red flashes. And generally, a lot of other people were assigned directly to the 5th. But we lasted a few weeks, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. And orders came down. In fact, myself and a couple of buddies, we decided that garrison duty was not something that we were particularly fond of. And so we all put orders in to request Ranger School. And then we all went on leave for a couple of weeks. And when we came back, company clerk said, "Hey, I got some good news, but I got some bad news. The good news is, hey, you got your orders for Ranger School." I said, "Oh, well, that's great. Fantastic. Well, the bad news is here's orders canceling Ranger School, and here's new orders sending you to the 5th Special Forces Group and trying Vietnam." And so took another couple of weeks to leave the post and get processed with shots and some orientation and that. And then we got leave. All three of us got leave. We all went our separate ways. Converged about a month later at Fort Lewis, Washington, and where we flew to Vietnam, the Republic of. And so we landed at the Cam Bay Repo Depot, where, we were all E4s at the time, but we'd all been in the Army almost 2 years by that point. And so we knew our way around, and, we were, of course, we thought we were smarter and faster and crazier than most. So, but we quickly realized that the Big Green was not for us. They had, some folks who were, talking about, well, while you're waiting around here, you do KP, you do latrine duty, you do this. And, we just looked at each other and looked at that guy and just went, this ain't in the cards here, pal. And so we just left and hung out, went to the club, hung out, waited for orders. We got orders. I was one of my buddies went down to 4 Corps. I was ordered up to 2 Corps, and my third friend was, I think he went to 3 Corps. So got up there, and it was a B team in Quy Nhon. They had a beautiful compound right on the waterfront, and so I was there and was a junior medic. And so what I did there for a couple of 3 weeks, I was assigned. I was sent out to A camps under that B team to replace other medics who had been wounded or killed or off on R&R. So I did that for a little while, came back, and the senior medic there was a fellow by the name of Sergeant First Class Bob Laura. And he just a bit of a wheeler dealer, good guy, big heart. And we were talking one day, and he said, we got to get in the war, we got to get in the war. And I go, yeah, that's, that sounds great. And I said, well, and here's an E7. He's been around for, X number of years. And here I am, in fact, I think I just made Sergeant E5, so brand new buck sergeant. And he said, "Oh yeah." I said, "Well, I think the Mike Force is the place to go. They see a lot of action. You get to do a lot of soldierly things, put your training to good use." And I go, "Yeah, that sounds great." And then I had to break down and admit, I said, I didn't know what the Mike Force was. And so he explained it, and I said, yeah, I think, I can do that. So again, a couple of weeks go by. He goes, "Hey, listen," he says, "I think I got a way to get you up there. You can go up to Kontum and check in there, and they'll help you out, and you'll be part of the Mike Force." I said, "Oh, great." And so he said, "Well, pack your bags and just throw them on the truck." And he says, "I got a convoy, and I'm shuffling up a bunch of medical supplies to Kontum." He says, when you get there, just stay there. And he says, "I'm sure they need your help." I said, well, that's great, okay. And so I packed so I asked him, I said, well, what aren't there, isn't there, like orders or, I have to tell somebody? He goes, no, 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 no. He says, I got that covered. He says, I'll tell McGuire, who is Sergeant Major Charlie McGuire, who is the inventor of the McGuire rig, been around Special Forces, big, tall, scruffy guy, rough around the edges, but just a great guy and dry sense of humor. And I said, oh, well, if you'll, take care of that, I'm fine with that. Off I went. I got to Kontum, dismounted. Guy came towards me. It turns out he was the team captain. And of course, as usual, in a typical Special Forces sort of welcoming, he looked at me and squinted his eye and asked, who the fuck are you? And of course, I saluted and I said, well, I'm Sergeant Lucier. And he goes, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a medic. And he goes, oh, you must be here to replace John Paget. And of course, I'm going through my mind. I'm going, well, yeah. I mean, the guy gives me the right answer, I'm going to give it back to him. So I said, yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm here to do that. So that was my pathway to the Mike Force. And by the way, I talk about not learning my lesson. I volunteered for the Army. I volunteered for jump school. I volunteered for Special Forces. I volunteered for Vietnam, and then I had to volunteer for the Mike Force. So that's a lot of volunteering. But fortunately for me, it all worked out. So we're out on our first operation, and it turns out it's Ben Het. And so while I was up there, there was a change in team sergeants, and I'm coming out of the field, and I think that was like a 30-day or it was a long operation. I mean, we were just, I know I was beaten. I was young. I was 20 years old, so I was pretty beat. No, I think I turned 21. Yeah, I turned 21 there. So anyway, I was kind of limping on out of the out of the jungle, and Robert Mulcahy, he was a master sergeant at the time, been in and out of Southeast Asia since 1962, and he goes, who are you? Because we hadn't met. I go, well, I'm Sergeant Lucier. He goes, Lucier. He goes, oh my God. He says, we're about ready to call your folks back in the States to see if maybe you'd skedaddle back home. And I said, what? And he says, yeah, they've been looking all over for you. They didn't know where you were. And of course I said, well, Sergeant Laura said he was going to take care of that. And he goes, Bob Laura? And they had known each other for a long time. And he just rolled his eyes. He put his arm around, turned me around and started walking away with me. He goes, listen, son, he says, you stick with me and I'll take care of you, which he did. So that was kind of my introduction to, the whole Mike Force and the team aspect and what it meant to be an A team at that time on with the Kontum Mike Force. And I was, I'll have to say, I mean, I worked with professionals, every step of the way. And, they knew I was young. They knew I was inexperienced. But most importantly, they wanted me to succeed. And so they helped me succeed. And, again, the outcome was very positive for me. I managed to survive and then some. It was just a great experience. So I was with the 241 company of the Kontum Mike Force, which is the 4th Battalion, 2 Corps Mike Force. And on occasion, I got to run the company. And then there were a couple of occasions where I'd gone into the TOC, the Tactical Operations Center that we'd set up in 8 camps for these operations. And I got, at one point, I got an opportunity, and it was just chance and circumstance. I got to actually run a battalion with troops in contact in a firefight. So I got to direct the medevacs, all the resupply, the artillery, the fast movers, all of that stuff. And I was and they let me do it. My team captain, team sergeant, and again, it was chance and circumstance. They asked me if I'd look, I'd sit at the radio for a while while they took a break and went and ate or I don't know, cat napped or whatever they did in the middle of the day, and so that was quite an experience for me, and they let me do it, and they really did. I mean, it comes down to they wanted me to succeed, and so I did everything that I could. I thought that I was doing a decent job, and I guess they did too. So I survived, came home. My family was there to greet me at the airport, and it almost brought tears to my eyes because and I'm the second of 11 children, so I'm the eldest son, and so my youngest sister at the time was almost 10. Yeah, she was a little over 9, and so they were all at the airport, and they had signs, and it was yeah. I almost broke down and cried. I was happy to be home and seeing them. It was just a wonderful experience. So that was kind of my Army career. I was in for just under 3 years because I got an early out, and that my contract was coming up within, I think at the time it was within 90 days. And so when I came home, I left the Army and made my way home back to St. Louis with interim stops in Seattle, San Diego, Phoenix, and then St. Louis. So that kind of, I think, rounds it out.
Wow, that's amazing, and I had some photos to kind of show. You had mentioned when you first graduated, you were with the 7th group, and you mentioned the red flash, and I believe this is graduation day.
It is, and in fact, my mom and dad came down for that, and they were pleased and proud and all that kind of stuff, and they met my training commander, who my dad knew. They had mutual friends, so they hit it off real well. And Billy Joe Turner was our company commander, and he'd been a Delta guy, and
SOG.
big as a house. Just Billy Joe was, at least he seemed that way to me. Of course, I wasn't the biggest guy in the world, but Billy Joe was one of these, big hulking guys, and he looked like a Green Beret. He looks like the poster boy, and a big square cut jaw, and probably he looked like a linebacker in uniform. So anyway, he and my dad got along really well, and so that was nice to see, and it was really sweet that they were able to come down to my graduation at Fort Bragg and cheer me on.
Speaking of your father, I mean, and this can kind of tie into in a two-parter question.
Sure.
Your reasoning for join, but also you've got military history in your blood. I mean, your mother and father.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, it goes back even further. Just a couple of months ago, I found out that I had a distant relative several generations back that actually fought in the Revolution, and then I was aware of a long lost cousin that fought in the Civil War. My grandfather was an Army captain, an infantry captain who fought in World War I, and then my dad was a lieutenant commander in the Navy. He graduated from Notre Dame, and in '42, immediately went to a Navy supply school. Was assigned to an aircraft carrier and he spent a couple of years in the South Pacific at the height of the war. And it just so happens that his XO on that ship turned out to be the future Admiral Zumwalt, who was the CNO years later. And so, and then my mom was a Women's Air Service pilot. She, of course, she learned to fly airplanes when she was, I think she got her license when she was 16. And she took lessons. She took civilian lessons and paid for them by washing airplanes at the local local airport. And so so when the war broke out, she made application. The numbers there were like 25,000 applied, 1,800 were selected, and 1,100 graduated, and that was the makeup of the Women's Air Service pilots of World War II. And I was honored to represent her. She had passed, represent her, and I think it was 2012, to receive a Congressional Gold Medal, which had been approved by Congress and at the time, I think, President Obama. And so myself and some of my siblings, a couple of my nephews went, and I was able to receive that award for her. And so, yeah, there's quite a military history there. And I got a cousin who was flying missions off the Kitty Hawk. He's a naval aviator and spent a lot of airtime over North Vietnam. Finally got shot down. Was able to reject, and they recovered him and got him good medical care, but that took him off medical status, or took him into medical retirement, and then disability based on his wounds received as a on that mission. So and that all took place just prior to me going to Vietnam. So my parents were and before I went, the kid across the street who was a Marine Corps officer was killed. And so there was a lot going on right at that time. And of course, I'm thinking, I'm the big bad, Green Beret and blah, blah, blah. And my parents are just looking at me like my son. That's all they could think about. But, I got there and back safely, and they supported me every step of the way, and I was really, I wouldn't have made it without them. They were and my brothers and sisters too, and because that was a tough tour for a 20-year-old, and so that's a lot to take in, and so when I got back, I went to Arizona State University, go Devils, and graduated and with honors in political science, and I went to work as a telecommunications finance kind of guy, and did that for quite a while, and ended up doing some things on my own in the Silicon Valley, and then moved back to Tempe, Arizona, where a lot of my family had kind of settled, and which is the home of ASU, and started picking up life there. Then 9/11 happened, and I was working for a large real estate company at the time, and wasn't real thrilled with it, but shortly after 9/11, I got a phone call from a friend, ex-Special Forces guy, said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, kind of hanging out. I got this job, but I'm not real thrilled about it." And he said, "Well, hey, you got any interest in going to Iraq?" And, he said, "The money's good, but, there's certain risk." And I said, "Yeah, well, when do we have to be there?" He said, 2 weeks. So 2 weeks later, I was sitting. I was on my way to actually Kuwait, and then we drove up into Iraq through Baghdad and up to near Tikrit and that area there, and I landed in. Then I worked for a while near Ramadi and Fallujah. Stayed up there for quite a while. There we go. This was in let me think here. This was right outside of Tikrit, actually right outside of Beji, which is a little bit the closer town. And these folks in the picture are all Peshmerga, Kurdish fighters. You'll notice the kerosene lantern up there and their flag in the background, and because we had let it be known that we needed more security folks, and we wanted to hire some. And so I talked to these folks, and I said, look, we need some, and I said, I asked him, I said, do you think you can do that? And he looked at me, he kind of scratches his chin, he goes, yeah, I think we can get about 3,000. We don't want to take over a small third world country here, bud. We just want, so we wanted to hire, I don't know, 30 or 50. And they said, oh, no problem. They're all Peshmerga. And they had seen that I was wearing a special forces ring at the time.
Wow.
And there we go. And so he said, yeah, no problem at all. We'll get these folks together for you. And then he said, which was just, again, it kind of choked me up when he said, Mr. David, he said, listen, he says, times are dangerous. And we know that sometimes things go bad. He said, but he says, stick with me. You stay with me, and I will guarantee that I will get you back to your family safely. And I went, whoa, all right. And so, that was quite a promise. And it kind of went to exactly how, how these relationships went, really deep. When somebody says, no matter what, I'll make sure you get back to your family safely. That's quite a commitment. So in this picture here that you've got up, I was in Afghanistan, down in Kandahar province at an A camp, doing some work down there, and that was the first time I got to work with the Special Forces team since leaving the Army. So it'd been 50 years basically, and so I was there on a civilian contract and found my way to this Special Forces A camp down in Kandahar province, and so it was quite an honor. But trying to keep up with, and at the time I was 60 years old, so I'm 60 years old, and I'm trying to keep up with these, buffed up young 20-year-old somethings, early 30 somethings, and who had just come out, where they were all state of the art and top of their game, and but I managed to keep up, but it was a challenge. Yeah, so this was the patch of the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force Afghanistan, and
I love the throwback to y'all's Vietnam era looking patch.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
like y'all's old bomb burst patches y'all made.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great stuff.
By design, by the way. That wasn't a coincidence. That was
okay. Then there we go.
That's
got you.
Yeah, because I asked about that. I thought, boy, this looks awfully familiar. And they go, well, yeah. What do you think?
That's got your fingerprints all over it. That's amazing. How I've got another photo or two here. Oh, this is a good one. These next two. How long were you? You mentioned, I believe, or working with the Peshmerga. I take it you're near Iraq, and then you said Afghanistan. How long were you working with the Joint Task Force?
That contract was about 8 months, and that was plenty for me. I got my fill.
Yeah.
And it was what it was. No, I'm not belly aching by any stretch, but this picture here that you've got up is right outside of Ramadi, and we had set up a small workspace. Really, there was what we were doing is we were doing security work for the folks who were attached to the what they call captured munitions program, and that's where all the ordnance and small arms and ammunition that they collected it all up, and then they were in the mission there was to destroy all of it. And so they were blowing up just this one site, and there were like 55 of these sites all over the country, and we were blowing up about 100 tons a day.
God.
And that was 6 days a week. We got, we took Sundays off mostly, although Sundays for us, a lot of times, and we would stand up mobile security teams and, take them into a Marine base or something where there was a few more, a few more amenities, and there was a base exchange there, and a few more amenities. They had a good good medical battalion, kind of like a MASH unit, as a surgical unit, fairly advanced, all things considered. And so we worked a lot of times 7 days a week, but it was good work, and we were able to do a lot of good things, and we were proud of the work that we did, and we didn't lose. We lost American security personnel, people on the teams, but we never lost a protectee. So
wow, that's amazing.
And all these folks in Iraq, I mingled pretty heavily. They were mostly, a good portion of them were ex-special forces and Rangers, and most of them had combat experience, and of course all the Vietnam guys did, and we were all older compared to the younger Rangers for the most part, and so we were always they were giving us a bad time about being the old guys, and we really hadn't done anything since Vietnam. And then one of our little outposts got attacked, and we were all there, and there were about 25 that attacked, and we killed 20 of them in about 40 minutes, all Vietnam guys. And so that kind of shut their mouths for a while.
There you go. There you go. Show you the old guys can still do work.
Yeah, we still had it. So, and they begrudgingly admitted it, but admitted it nonetheless. So, again, lots of good friends, met a good. In fact, strangely enough, I was sitting in a computer room, and down this line of computers, I heard somebody say something about the Mike Force, and I thought, well, who in the hell knows about the Mike Force? This is unbelievable. Well, it turned out to be a guy who was on on my team after I'd left, just after I'd left, and so he was with the Kontum Mike Force, and the teams they turned over, and so he was there, and so we sat and chatted, and yeah, we knew all the guys on the teams that when I was there, and all that kind of business. So I see you're zooming in.
I'll get beat over the head if I don't ask both generations. What kind of watch did you like to wear while you were in the Middle East?
That's a Seiko. It's a Seiko dive watch.
And, oh wow! Okay.
It was rugged and good enough. In fact, I gave that watch to one of my nephews when I got back. I gave my I've got a bunch of nieces and nephews. I mean, you can imagine I'm the second of 11, and kids all over the place. So I gave one nephew that watch, and then I gave another nephew a watch that I wore in Vietnam.
Wow, that's amazing. You never can fail with the Seiko. Were you I take it, I mean, you being an SF man, I gotta take it you at least had one Rolex.
I do, and as a matter of fact, I'm wearing it as we speak.
You've got the Pepsi on there. I gotta say that's my favorite Rolex right there. That is a piece of art right there.
It is, and I mean, it just by again chance and circumstance, I kind of learned about watches along the way, and this one is worth far, far, far more than I ever paid for
I was
it.
I was about to say you still paid a lot for it, because I was talking to guys, saw guys that bought them in Thailand, and they thought
Yeah,
it was a fortune then, and we got to
yeah,
looking how much they're worth now, and I think Mr. Terry's got a few, and I mean they are worth tens of 20s of
yeah,
thousands of dollars
yeah,
now.
yeah.
It's crazy,
Oh, it's
crazy.
just bizarre. And I thought, oh well, times ever get tough, I know where to
I was
go.
about There you go. You got a little E&E on your wrist there, if you will, if
Yeah,
times get tough.
yeah,
Um, all right, we'll kind of segue here back into to Vietnam here. Let me see. I know actually you, because you had spoken, I believe, about seeing a was it a time life that you saw when you were first wanting to join the military that really
yeah,
that kind of, was it the Green Berets you saw,
yeah,
SF men?
yeah,
Okay. Um,
yeah,
and guys, here's
and
another Afghan photo with your
yeah, that
Montagnard
was
bracelet.
in fact that was my last night on that contract, and we were sitting right next to we're sitting next to oil an oil refinery, and
Wow.
um, the something caught fire,
Oh,
and it was what looked like a big fire, and so we thought, oh shit, we're under attack. This is we're next, because we were like right next to it, and so fortunately it was something, it was a maintenance problem that went wrong. There was a fire, and so we're thinking, oh geez, here we are. It's time for the Alamo. It's kind of what goes through your head. And so in this particular case, I was checking my Beretta, making sure that everything was functional, and going through a weapons check before we went to our battle stations. And but it turns out, fortunate, and that was my last night on that facility, and I'd left just right after that. So um, somebody took a picture and sent it to me, and there you can see I'm wearing on my right wrist there. There's a brass bracelet, and that was one from Vietnam that Montagnard had given me, and so it was, and the baseball cap that I'm wearing is from a bar and grill, a neighborhood bar and grill just down the street from where I used to live, Casey Moore's Oyster House, and so I wore that through all three contracts. So um, it appears in pictures here and there, and so yeah, so that was Iraq. One of my last. That was like I say, the last night at that duty station before I left.
do you still have your Montagnard bracelet that you had in your photo there?
I do. It broke out of wear, and one of these days, who knows when, I'm going to take it to a metal
Get them
worker, and have it
soldered together.
fused back together,
Hmm.
because it's. But I wore it for, gosh, well, let's see, that was in 2005, 4, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think that was it. And so it lasted that long until it broke. So it lasted a long time. So I've got it in an envelope and stashed away in a file. And one of these days I'll get her fixed up and start wearing it again.
Oh yeah, we love seeing you guys still got them. Some guys still wear them, or have gotten
Yep.
replacements and wear them, and then other guys either have them on their mantle pieces, or
Yeah.
put in a shadow box. It's nice to see you guys still revere those pieces of physical evidence of
Yep.
camaraderie you built
Yeah.
with your men.
Yeah. They were
Um,
important. They are important.
Absolutely, and there's already when we get to questions, there's going to be some questions about them. But you mentioned you had saw a story and really kind of struck you, and that's what got you into wanting to join, or was a reason behind. And here you are in the Green Beret magazine being
Yeah.
pictured. What's going on here?
Well, we were pulling an operation in around Dak To, which was just, let's see if I get my geography right. It's just east of Ben Het, and there was a fire base there, and fairly well developed outpost. And so we were up in the hills. The hills ran north and south on both sides of the valley, and so this was, I believe, on the west side of the valley. And so we needed to. You can see it's fairly clear there, no big high trees or anything. And so I came out of the wood line to direct an inbound helo that was doing a resupply. So I was out there giving him instructions. I didn't want to throw smoke. We were tracking some NVA units at that point, and I mean, not that there wasn't, a helicopter comes in, everybody's going to notice it. That's no big secret, but every little bit helped. And so we would work the phone. They would come in via radio signal. They'd find us via radio signal, and at the right time, I'd stand up and bring them on in. Give them the whole, hand and arm signal.
Directing traffic routine.
They'd push their stuff out, and away they'd go. So.
Wow. And another, we've got a photo for later of another name you mentioned, but I wanted to show guys because everyone will know this that watches the show will know the name. You mentioned Mr. Charles McGuire, and I happen to have a photo of Mr. Charles.
Yeah, that'd be him.
the McGuire rig man himself.
Yeah. And lots of combat experience, and special forces experience, and he was all the senior NCOs when I got there were on the backside of their careers, and they were all senior NCOs, so that made sense. And here's a guy who was a sergeant major. And so he was kind of just finishing up, and I was just starting, and but he was a just the poster boy for the sergeant major, no two ways about it. He was big, and you could see from his haircut he had sported that flat top, and he was all business, but he had a great sense of humor and great anecdotal stories. So I remember one day I was standing on the porch of this villa. We had a villa, and it was right on tough life, right on the beach, and so we had some Koreans coming in, staying with us for a couple of days, and they were out in the morning doing their karate chop and kicking and hua, going through that, and McGuire was standing next to me, and I said, "Gosh, I don't think I'd really want to be running into these fellas anytime soon." And he just looked at me and kind of looked down at me like, "I ain't seen nothing come through the jungle I haven't been able to knock down with an M16." And I went,
there you go.
Oh, there's that.
that the perfect response for that. That's
yeah.
That's
So that was
right out of a movie line.
Yeah.
Good
guy.
Mr. Terry, who served at CCC right down the road from you, which actually I think we've got a map I'll bring up. Talk about parallel universes. Both of us from St. Louis, both at Fort Leonard Wood, and then both in the 7th. Wow, that's that is very interesting. And then he went on to SOG at CCC, and he went on to the Mike Force. very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Again, with you mentioning the Kontum, being the Kontum Mike Force, I'm about to pull up a map, but was y'all's compound located in the city by the airport? The Kontum Mike Force.
Yeah, what they did is they used a lot of military units. They encircled the city itself, and so each unit had a responsibility for and that was B-24, and then we were right next door. Now we were B-24. There was a different command structure at the time, and so but our compound was like I say, we encircled the city. Our compound was there, and then right next door was B-24, because at the time Mike forces were under the control of those B teams, and then they restructured and came up with a Mike Force Command, Mobile Strike Force Command. And so while they continued to help support us, we reported through our Mike Force Command, and so there was kind of and they helped us out a lot, and of course they were for the most part garrison folks, and we weren't, and so there was some conflict there. We'd come in from the field, and after being out for a long time, you had a tendency to pick up an odoriferous scent, offensive to some, and so we'd come in, sit in their mess hall, and we were asked to leave until we could go clean up. But they were good guys, and they helped out a lot, and we depended on, and they technically they didn't have to, but we were who we were, and there's a lot of good history and a lot of good, so that relationship stayed pretty darn good the entire time. And the airport was not far from us. The past the B-24 compound was the they had a lot of it was where the airport was, and it's where all the FAC pilots came out of, and our helo support, whether it's whatever it was there. We had a lot of gunships were there, and the Hueys, and the typical kind of Vietnam helicopter support that everybody had, OH-1s, all that stuff. And so a lot of times we had forward air controllers who lived over there, and when we come in out of the field, we'd bring them on over. Our compound was closed, and so that meant nobody got on without the team leader's permission. And so that went for everybody. So it didn't make any difference what your rank was. You didn't come onto that compound. So we could restrict it pretty well. And so we'd bring over our FAC pilots who were supporting us. And of course we had parties and lots of good food and drink and movies and all that good stuff. And so we'd invite them over, and we'd wine them and dine them and whore them, and they were all happy. A few times we sent them back out on duty, and they were 3 sheets to the wind. I don't know how they survived, but they were they were really, really terrific, and they stuck their necks out for us and risked their lives on many occasions when they didn't have to, but they did, and so it was really great to put because everything was radio call sign and nobody knew who. But so it was really, really important for us that they knew who we were and that we were real people, and let them know that how we really, really appreciated their support, their life-saving support, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I can't imagine getting some named faces after what y'all had been through was probably a pretty rewarding thing to finally get to say thank you in person was probably pretty heavy experience. For This is the question that comes up a lot, and I don't until reading recently. As you said at the beginning, not a lot of people know what the Mike Force was made for, what it was doing. Robert had a question, and you can expand a little bit what it was actually doing and made for. He was asking, are the Mike Forces, were they like the Hatchet Forces for Project Delta and other things? And could you let us know what the Mike Force was and what they were doing?
Sure. Well, the Hatchet Forces for B-52, Delta, Sigma, and
Gamma
pardon me?
and Omega. Gamma and Omega.
Omega, yes, yeah. And so they this was Mike Forces were an evolution, and so the Hatchet Forces were a quick reaction force, largely, and they worked at the time for those for those units, and as it evolved, and as the war evolved and expanded, so did the Mike Force, and so and then they became really a large scale company, battalion size, quick reaction force, and then they grew into just a light airborne infantry unit, and so well, it was very mobile. But they were at one. In fact, it was named at one point. It was called the Mobile Guerrilla Force, and so so it's kind of a combination of those things, and it evolved, and so it eventually evolved into a command structure where the Trang had let's see what they had I think 5 battalions there in the Trang, and then you had the I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, 4 Corps Mike Forces, which were again they were units that were there to begin with mostly as quick reaction forces, RFPs as they call them now, rapid forces, and so they would, depending on where you were stationed, you could go east, you could go north, you could go south. And then if things got really, really bad, then you can always call on the Trang Mike Force to come in and reinforce. But if you look along from, let me put my glasses on here, from I Corps on the western border there, and as you come down into 2 Corps, you'll see Ben Het up there, and and Kontum was kind of in between Ben Het and Pleiku, and so that's where we were. And then further south was the 5th Battalion Mike Force, Bami Tuit, on the western border, and so we were strategically located. And then there were 3 battalions in Pleiku, and so if you look just west of Ben Het, that's right where the tri-border area is. So north of that was Laos, and south of it was Cambodia, and if you went from North Vietnam and into Cambodia, or into Laos and then into Cambodia, and then cut east, like right into Ben Het, or right along that from anywhere from Ben Het to Bami Tuit, those were entry points for on the Ho Chi Minh. That was all part of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It was a supply line for the North Vietnamese Army, bring men and material. And so there were camps, special forces camps, that were there initially to interdict all that. And as the war got, expanded, then we expanded with Mike Force reinforcement, and they were there to either take back the camps. In some cases, the NVA had overrun those camps, and so the Mike Force was there to take those camps back, or to reinforce them in their defense, or to perform operations to keep the North Vietnamese off of those camps. And so that's and again, those missions evolved over time, and so by the time I left, they were mostly defending A camps outside the wire and harassing, interdicting, engaging the enemy outside those camps. And so, and that's where, and a lot of times and the tactic on the North Vietnamese Army side was under the cover of the monsoon, because they ran from north to south. Monsoons did. So as soon as the monsoons got as far as, say, Ben Het, that area, then because it was really tough for air cover at that time, and there were a lot of times that artillery didn't reach that far because of where they were, and so they would come in, men and material, under cover of the monsoon, and then rush into South Vietnam to reinforce, re-equip, bring men and material to the war effort. Most of those were North Vietnamese Army regiments. And so so we kind of followed the monsoons, and it was an annual thing. You start north and work your way south, start north, work your way south. And that's what they did. And the monsoon gave them a lot of good cover, because we were in the highlands, and so high hills, I mean, what they call mountains there, but they were pretty high hills, and low clouds. So you had absolutely no air cover. And so when you go into these areas, generally you were outgunned, outmanned, anywhere from 5 to 1 to 10 to 1, but you could still disrupt a lot of activity. But it meant that you were walking into some pretty dangerous territories, and we got lucky a lot of times. We were as they would say, low on ammunition, hip deep in grenade pins, and surrounded, and we weren't sure we were going to get out of there. And then on a couple of different occasions, the clouds broke. We got these AE-1 Sky Raiders to come in, and we talk about close air support. I mean, it was, in fact, my memory is that I never called air support that wasn't danger close, and so. So that's, in fact, I was standing there like a dummy. I should have been, down a little bit, but, kind of doing the air support thing. And it was so close. I mean, I had a football-sized piece of shrapnel come whistling down. I mean, just right next to me. If I'd have been, half a foot over, I mean, it would have been all over for Sergeant Lucier, that's for sure. And I just stopped. I mean, stuff's going on. I'm looking at this thing, and it's smoking and sizzling, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I spit on it, and it just sizzled. It was so hot, and I thought, oh, maybe it's time to get down. Plopped down, took cover. Yeah. It's but we were lucky a lot of times when that would happen. We were engaged, heavy engagement, and these are battles. These are not little firefights or ambushes that would go on for maybe 10 minutes, but these were hours long. They'd start in the morning, and go all day until the afternoon, and so it was. That was the job, and that was the Mike Force, and we did our job, and I think that we did it really, really well.
I've from all I've read and from hearing about guys or from all the men I talk to, everyone respects the Mike Force and speaks highly of them for y'all getting out there and kicking tail and doing what y'all did, because and some of the photos y'all see, I mean, they were out there roughing it and living hard. And
and I mean, I was so honored, really, to be with the 4th Battalion. And just to let you, there was a point in time when we had more Purple Hearts we had more Purple Hearts than we had authorized slots. And then by the time I left, members of the team had earned every award for valor from the Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, and commendation medals with V devices. So it was just Yeah, it was, but that's, that was the job. That's what we did. Sometimes I wear uh, my gobbledygook on my suit, and people goes, God, you must have been in for 30 years, and I go, no, that's
Uh,
what a year in Vietnam will do when you're doing the work, you know, and and it's true. We had folks who we had I mean, we took casualties, that's for sure. Um, and but we did the job, did it well, and I mean, we took our losses, we took our hits, and those folks will be honored forever.
mm, mm. And where were you guys at this point in time?
We were on
You're
our way to Ben Het. We had met up with myself and the guy to the right, I guess my left, but yeah, right. Oop, oop, go the other way. Yeah, right there. Charlie Shalala, who
Chile.
was an E6, and this was my first. This was my first combat first combat operation. And so he and I ran a 241 company, and the kid next to Charlie there is a kid named Di Sedang Montagnard, who became my bodyguard and saved my life a couple of times. And then on the far left it was the sergeant first class who was running. Let's see, he ran third company at the time. No, second company, and a long time SF guy, and been around a couple of combat tours. Charlie had been with the Mike Force for a couple of years. He ran with another guy by the name of Charlie Carpenter, who was killed at Ben Het, as a matter of fact, a couple of months before this picture was taken. And Charlie probably did 4 or 5 tours in Vietnam, and was finally severely wounded, blinded, and obviously went home to New England, and he died a few years later. So in fact, uh, 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 a lot of, of course, I was at the young end of the spectrum, and all these other guys were at the so my team sergeant, a lot of these guys have passed, or a few of them were KIA and had been wounded in while at the Mike Force.
Wow. What man? I mean, what man?
Yeah.
Nick, and we've got a good photo of that'll kind of show this is a good question. Nick is wondering how close were you, or how close did you get with the yards of your company or your team? Any fond memories?
Oh, they're almost all, I mean, not all, but a lot of fond memories from the standpoint that um, the yards were only as good as their leadership, and I'm proud to say that. I'm not trying to sound like I'm building myself up here, bragging or anything, but these kids were really great and really performed well when they had leadership who cared about them, and
Mm,
so all of these kids were these kids were all from well, we recruited, we separated the companies by tribe, and
uh,
so by doing so they all mostly came from the same villages, and so these kids were all Sedang, and they ranged from about 14 to 17 years old, just youngsters. Starting on the left, there was he was the our one of the medics right there. Then the guy leaning over my shoulder, fellow by the name of Drock. He unfortunately, we were. This was some months later, down near Bubrang, and he broke killed a couple of his friends and then took his own life.
Oh God.
He was just a sweet kid. He was he spoke a little bit of English, but not much. And when we were in one of their villages on our way up to Ben Het one time, we stayed overnight, RON'd it in one of their villages, and then, out of nowhere, he walks through this, into the little hooch with a guitar, and sat down and strummed out, and in perfect English, sang an entire rendition of "Hey Jude."
Oh my
It
God.
was just like,
Wow.
oh, Jesus. And then there's Die again below Drock, and then the three kids to over there. They were all friends and relatives, and Tong there on the end was performed as an interpreter for translator for a while. See, one of the things that they only spoke Sedang, their dialect, and so every tribe had a different dialect. So it was impossible to mix them up and expect them to do anything. And most of them didn't speak Vietnamese, and no Vietnamese spoke Sedang. So we had our own little code talkers going there for the most part, and so we utilized that that resource quite a bit, and they were just as sweet as could be, and they saved my life a couple of times, and they were very, very loyal. But again, that kind of goes to, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but if you were a good leader and you cared about them and you watched over them and did all the things that a good leader should do, then they were hugely loyal, and they loved to play tricks. I mean, it was just so funny. We were out in the field, and man, there was no two ways about it. I had to go relieve myself, and so I was coming back into the perimeter, and while I was out there, they put a trip flare out there, and I come walking back and trip the flare, and of course I'm thinking, oh my God, something, and I'm pointing guns and doing all this stuff, and all I could hear is just peals of laughter, coming from that side of the perimeter, and they're just laughing their asses off, and that was, they were very, so they loved a good joke and they loved a good spoof, and they knew that, it was all done in jest, and but it was like, oh my God, we're tripping flares here, where we are. Well, I think they knew where they were, and I guess felt comfortable enough to do that. So, but stuff like that, they were and these were kids, I didn't even think about that until years later, but we had kids who were as young as 12 and 13, and their leaders were old at 19. I don't think we had anybody over 20, but most of them were, and they all they worked for the Mike Force, and they also worked for MACV-SOG, and so there's Tong again, Tong as the taller, lighter skinned, right there, and he was, I think, 19, but he was bigger than most, and I think that's what gave him some command. Charlie Shalala there on the end, and I was getting close to going home at this point, and so we snapped a picture. We'd been back in camp for a couple of days, so we were relatively cleaned up, and
I was about to say, you look awful clean for Mike Force times. That's how you know you were.
Well, we got these are dress uniforms here. We could put on our clean tigers, and just because we're back in camp, and so you can see the barracks there behind us, and we had to off to the right, I guess. My left, your anyway. That's where we had our barracks. We had it was similar, but each we had, it wasn't an open bay. We all had private rooms, which was very nice. I mean, our rooms were as nice as you'd find at Holiday Inn Express. They were air conditioned. We had real beds. The whole thing, and lots of clean water. Since our one of our guys had he borrowed what they call an ertolator, which is designed to treat, get pure water, for I think close to a division or something like that, and we had it for the 12, 13 of us. So we had running water and real showers and clean water, and it was nice. But again, it goes to the special forces sort of perspective. This was our home for the time being. So we lived well when but we weren't there very often. But when we were, we thought we lived really, really well.
That actually ties into two questions. One from the picture, but talking about living well, with the SF-SOG guys, especially, scrounging comes up.
Yeah.
Jason was curious. Like I said, with our SOG guests, we always ask about acquiring gear and goods. Were you around anyone who was exceptionally good scrounger, and what was his best haul that you can remember? As long as you won't get in trouble for it.
Statute of limitations.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I did a fair amount of scrounging. Just because I was around a lot of supply depots, because I was always going down for needed supplies, medical supplies mostly. But there was always some other things that we'd toss in, and so I'd usually take a couple of deuce and a halves and a truckload of Montagnards, and we'd head off and go down to mostly the big depots for us was Quignon. And so we could go down there, and whenever we did, I'd just dress in plain greens, no green beret, no nothing. And but these yards were armed to the teeth, and because we had to traverse some fairly dicey areas, the Anke Pass for one, and so we would go down there, and while I was there. Got plenty of medical supplies, but we didn't have, we just rolled into these supply depots and took whatever we wanted. And most of the time you needed, I don't know, whatever, some kind of requisition or authorization. We just took it. And it wasn't like we were black marketing it. I mean, this was going towards a war effort. And so my conscience was clear. But a lot of medical supplies. Plus, we had I'm digressing a little bit here, but in Kontum, there was a Catholic church, and these Sudangs were Catholic. They'd been converted to Catholicism, and so, but there was a bunch of nuns, sisters, that were running a hospital there in Kontum, and they took in. Your politics didn't matter. If you were hurt, you got treated. And I understood that, and everybody else did too. But I mean, they were mostly our guys, but I'm sure that they treated folks. It just didn't make any difference to them. If you were hurt, you got treated. That was it. And so, one of the things I did was I scooped up a lot of medical supplies for them, because they depended mostly on their Catholic charities and that. And it was okay, but not great. So I'd scoop up whatever I needed for them, along with the stuff that we needed, and then one of the things that I came across was I wanted some aviator glasses, and I had to wear prescriptions on occasion. My eyes weren't as bad as they are now, but it was an advantage. It was helpful. And so on one of my trips, I took a bunch of brass 155s that had been cut and polished to be ashtrays. and the tail end of these things. And so I took a bunch with me down there and traded them. And I got everybody's whoever needed prescriptions. I got their prescriptions, took them down there and traded. And so everybody had original issue aviator glasses, sunglasses, and
Wow.
a lot of them were prescriptions. So that was really, really a good haul. So that was one of the, that was a good one. I thought, and people appreciated it. And the other thing that was kind of out of the ordinary was we needed to set up a better communication link between our base and folks in the field and that. But we all we carried for the most part are prick 25s, pretty limited, and so somebody said, well, what we need a high antenna, and we are going to put up a 292, and the commo guys were going to get it all right, but we didn't have any. So I said, well, I think I might be able to help here, and it just so happened that I did summer work on the telephone construction crew, so I knew how to set a pole. Mostly
wow.
by hand, because we didn't at the time didn't have all the big heavy equipment and whatnot. So I said, so I found a 45-foot pole, telephone pole, and I borrowed some a belt and some climbing hooks, and we set the pole with a Jeep. We just dug the hole, got the thing close, pushed the Jeep up behind it, and so as we pushed back, it stood up and then dropped in the hole. Then we tamped it down and all that. And once we got it good and stable, then I climbed up on the top of it and put on my hooks and my belt and went up on top and pulled the 292 up and nailed it or fastened it to the top of the pole. And I mean, we could talk about anybody from Saigon to Hanoi, with that stuff. So
That's great.
I was like, how would you know how to do this? I used to do this in high school,
I could just picture you and your with your belt and your climbing gear shimmying up that pole. That's
Oh
a
man.
sight right there.
But
I
we
can
did it,
imagine.
and it worked out real well for us, and it made a big difference.
Oh, I can imagine so. I mean, heck, but between the aviators and getting that set up, you must have been the popular guy on the compound for quite a while.
I tried to do my best.
You can only do what you can, and evidently
Yeah.
you were doing pretty good. That's wonderful. There was here it is. There's another one because we get conflicting stories. The SOG guys wore them around the base, and of course, early on they might have and probably did, but didn't wear them across the border very much later on. Did y'all wear your tiger stripe uniforms all the time? Did y'all have a pair of something you wore out, or what was y'all's uniform situation?
Well, we in the Mike Force, because we stayed out for extended periods, we took resupply about once every 7 days, maybe sometimes 10, and that extended. Especially in bad weather. There were a couple of times we were down to basically cooking little geckos, and it was anyway. But the deal was is that we'd get resupplied, and so, but after about 7 days, our tiger stripes were just rotten. They'd been torn and ripped, and they were a mess. And if they would literally just they'd rot off you in between the dirt and the sweat and the and the use that they got. I mean, they just you're outdoors 7 days a week, and that's a tough way to live. And so a lot of times these things, so you needed a new set of stuff every 7 to 10 days. And so I usually kept an extra pair of pants. I figured I could always go without a shirt. worst came to worst. But a pair of pants, I usually, now these were, we'd run out of, we didn't have access to tigers on this operation down near Buprang, and in fact, that's Camp Buprang right behind us, and you can see you can see the Chinook in the background, and I couldn't tell you whether he was coming or going, but that was the airfield, and we were leaving. We were heading out, so these were, we got what we got, but you could see this is after about 5-6 days of wear, and these were holding up a little bit better. But I think in one of the pictures of where we got a well, anyway, so they would just, and so we would get resupplied during during those periods, and always you get new uniforms coming in because they were a mess. So yeah, here's what we normally wore, the tigers, but they lasted, well, not very long.
So that's what we've heard, that they and I've heard it from a SOG man or a Mike Force man who went into SOG, that y'all would wear them till they rotted off you.
Yeah, and that didn't take long.
Yeah.
Gosh, but we kept, I know everybody on our team, we kept our dressed tigers. and that's what you saw in that other picture, where we're all in clean tiger clothing.
I've got that. Let me pull that formation. That's a great photo. Well, y'all are in your
now here, this is see where, oops, go back to let's see, go to your right, keep going, stop right there. Whoop, go back, right there. That's Jim Gribben, who was a first lieutenant there at the time, and he came to the Kontum Mike Force a little bit later. And then to the right and to the back, that's me, right? Yeah, there we go. And this was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but this was at B-20. This was at B-22 in Quin Yon, and I don't know. And that's Laura on the end. Sergeant Laura on the end there. Yeah. And so we were doing something. There was some kind of ceremony, or somebody visited or something. So we were out there, and that's the CIDG
LLDB logo.
Yeah. And so that's that was just a picture that was taken, for some event there at B-22, and I was there at the time, and so I got, and I think Gribben, who is later killed, he was later killed at Ben Het.
One of our questions dealt with, did y'all work much with LLDB or CIDG?
The short answer is no. We had LLDB assigned to the Mike Force, but they didn't go out on operation. I think they came out once. One guy came out with us once, and that was a disaster. It was such a such tension between the Vietnamese and the Montagnards. Vietnamese called them Moi. They were all Moi.
Savage.
And savage, yeah. And so there was no love lost between the two, and so it was that was an issue. But they came out, but we ran the show. It was our operations. It was our strategies. Our missions came down through our command structure, and they were kind of there. They stayed in camp on occasion, and then on occasion, we'd hear stories of them, basically, scamming the Montagnards for, telling them that they had to pay a tax, and dipping into their. Well, as soon as we found out, that put that to a stop. But those are the kinds of things. They really didn't add much to the, didn't add much to the war effort, period. So that was, and the some of the camps, of course, we worked border camps with one exception. We worked on the Anlau Valley in that summer, but we were OPCON to the 173rd at the time, and so we didn't. It was the Mike Force working for the 173rd, and we did that for several weeks, and which is of course another story. But yeah, this is out. This is our compound in Kontum. It was fairly that picture is when it was fairly new, and there's a so that we built that sign. It's we took several team pictures in front of that sign, and that's the way
Very
I left it.
famous, very famous taking picture in front of it. I've actually got a photo here of Doc Paget in front of the sign before he left. Actually, you maybe recognize some people in
Oh, I
there,
know that
perhaps.
picture exactly. I sure do. Yep. And second from the left, well, in the upper left-hand corner, seated uh, on the far left. Far left.
Oh,
Keep
my
going.
bad. I thought you meant
Yeah.
there left.
Next one
There you go.
over. Next one
Oh,
over. Yeah, right there. Hank Luthi,
Hank
who is a
Lucy. Okay.
Luthi, yeah, Special Forces legend and all around crazy guy. And uh, we had 4 command sergeant majors come off this team.
Wow.
And so these were really. And then there's Jim Gribben next to Luthi, and then
Oh, wow.
Mulcahy next to Gribben. Mulcahy took Jim's body home, and so they were that was a team. That was a great team. I mean, and so Mulcahy became a command sergeant major, Luthi a command sergeant major. Um, oh, geez, brain farting. 2 other people on that team. One of them's not pictured here, but 2 others became command sergeant majors within Special Forces. So
Did
and
Doc
those guys,
Paget?
they were legends.
Did Doc
Oh,
Paget?
I know Joe Lopez, and he's not in this picture, but Joe became a command sergeant major as well. And old Joe was a boxer for the Army for a while. Man, he didn't care who you were or what you did. He was going to say, he settled his disputes with his fists, and I mean, he just well, he's
Was
a
his?
boxer.
Did he go by China Boy, Joe China Boy Lopez?
That's the one.
Yes, I've heard many a story about that
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Wow, that is so neat. Wow, I can't.
yeah,
That is a heck of a team right there
yeah,
with all of
yeah,
them in it. Wow,
yeah.
holy cow. Um, well, one of this is always a great question, and especially with as many operations as you guys were going on. Galil was curious what was y'all's biggest intel or enemy equipment find, or what were most impressive to you that y'all found?
We didn't find a whole lot, and one of the reasons, is like I say, when the command structure changed, its missions changed, and so we weren't out looking for equipment or anything. We were there to engage them, and during those engagements, we would capture some weapons, but we we used them to trade. And so
Yeah.
we would take an AK, or we ran okay. So we ran short of trading materials at one time, and so we went and had some Viet Cong flags made, and threw them into a
Oh yeah.
pit, and threw a couple of chickens in, blew up shot up the chickens, blood, bullet holes, all that, rubbed them in the dirt, and went off to the Air Force and traded them off for like cases of steaks. So, but we got the weapons wise. There was a program where if we captured weapons, then the Montagnards would get paid a bounty, and that those bounties would go into the company fund or the battalion fund. Whoever got the got the guns, got the weapons, got to keep them from the standpoint that's who got paid. And so, but the funds always went into, and there was a schedule of like if you got a AK-47, it was so much money. And I don't remember what the the price tag, the price lists were, but as they got bigger, the bounty got bigger. And so, but the interesting thing was we got paid, and the funds went to support the Montagnards and their families. But then we got to keep the weapons, and we traded them for stuff.
Whatever you needed. Yeah.
I mean, food, booze. It was, whatever we needed at the time. Then we could use that as trading, and usually our stuff went for a premium. So.
We've heard a few times that guys did the same thing with the Vietnamese flags and really getting some stuff that they really needed to get by. It's
it was common. It was a common practice.
Oh yeah. I wonder how many guys have VC flags that came from you guys that got chicken blood all over them. It's like,
if you ran the DNA, they'd find out they got chicken blood.
I love that. I love thinking about that.
Yeah.
We've got a few more questions here because we're coming up on an hour and a half now.
Okay.
And we've got and then we'll close it out with some photos, let you talk a little bit about them and what you did post Vietnam, because I still think what you did post is worth speaking about.
Thank you.
But Nick has a good question. What kind of training did your counterpart medic get?
Sure. Well, I aside from being a company leader in the field, I was also the battalion, and I was the only medic at the time. They were just short of medics, and that's the only reason I got on the Mike Force, because I had no combat experience. And generally you had to have at least 2 combat tours, or at least one or 2 combat tours prior to joining the Mike Force, and I had none. But I was a medic, so they made exceptions, and so that's how I got on, just by being a medic. And so one of my duties was to train all the medics in the battalion, all the yards. And so it was real basic. And so it didn't, well, first of all, we didn't have a whole lot to work with. So it was, real basic, stop the bleeding, clear the airway, treat, prevent for shock, that kind of thing. And so, and then the medical supplies that go with it. So everybody needed, their combat bandage, and, how to use them and what to do, and all that kind of stuff. And so, and so that's one of the things we would do during stand down, is we get all the medics together and go through a training exercise, and which was a challenge, because now we're speaking in 4 languages. We got 3 yard dialects in English, and so you got to go from one to another, and so it's a bit of a challenge, and you learn to speak a little bit differently, but you still have to get the idea across, and you just keep working with them till they get it, and for a lot of them, this wasn't brand new. A couple of them, yes, but there were several. I'd say at least half had experience before, but wanted them there that they could help other folks, other kids, if because I didn't do it all myself. But and so that was it was real basic, combat first aid, real basic. Anything beyond that,
just keep them alive kind of stuff.
It was very, very basic. You try and keep them alive. Yep, that's a, stabilize them as best you could. But for the most part, with a few exceptions, I'm busy, directing fire and doing the things that a commander does in the field with their troops. Now, on occasion, something I'd pitch in. And took a few minutes to do that. So, but yeah, that was mostly my. And when we get in out of the field, I mean, we didn't have much of a dispensary. It was ill-equipped, and we didn't have a lot of stuff. But B-24 had a bunch. They were better equipped. And if we needed a higher level, we made sure that we had a good relationship with the 4th Infantry Division. It was just across the river, and we could take, as an American, I could take these kids into their compound and get them, get them a real American doctor. And
wow.
But if, in some cases, we'd have, we'd use a medevac, and they'd go straight to either an indig hospital or even an American evac hospital.
Wow. Okay. So you'd say most of, and another part of that was most of the I should say young men, guys, kids, whatever you would age we're talking here. Most of the young men you had already had battle experience. I mean, I can imagine some were freshly trained here.
Yeah.
But a lot of them were battle tested already.
Yeah, and which was very, very helpful. In fact, we had some kids on our team in our companies whose fathers had fought at Dien Bien Phu with the French, and they had fought with the French. In fact, I mean, what we did wasn't something unique in somebody's great brainstorm. We followed the French. We followed the French playbook. And the French allowed them, which is what the Montagnards really wanted, was their own. They wanted self-determination, and so they could do that. And so the French set up protectorates, and so they're like what we would call our Indian reservations here, and they would give them self-governance and that, and because they would work for the French just like they worked for us, because they weren't Vietnamese citizens, they couldn't be drafted. And so here's this, huge resource that was going unutilized, and so the French hired them, the Americans hired them, and so that was what they did, and they were fighting for their own homeland, is what that was all about, and they wanted self-determination. And they were getting screwed left and right by the Vietnamese anyway. No education, no support whatsoever, and in a lot of cases, hugely, and dangerously, discriminated against. So that's why there was always tension.
Wow, gosh almighty. We've got two really good closing questions here. Jason was curious, I'm sure I can't wait to hear what this is, but did you ever have a what did I get myself into moment?
Twice. Once, as soon as I stepped off the freaking airplane and Cameron Bay went, oh, man, this place is really a shithole. I mean, it was just like, oh my God, what am I doing? And the other one was my first combat experience. Is like, holy shit, this never happened to John Wayne. And so yeah, those were the two moments, and that was my two. What the hell am I doing here? And it's a shock. You step off that airplane, and the humidity and the smell and everything about it is just it's eye opening, and I think everybody experienced that. It was just like, holy moly, here we are. This is the NOM. And of course, we were in Cameron Bay. It was secure. And the only thing about it was the high humidity, the high heat, and the stench. It just smelled way, way differently. So that was that
overload.
Yeah, and then that first combat experience is like, oh God. Anyway, so those were the two.
Wow. Not, I don't want to drag you too down deep into talking about, combat and such as that. But how I imagine you don't have time to keep a notepad or write down days or what have you, but how long were you guys trying to break the siege at Ben Het? How long were y'all there until y'all left and headed on back to Kontum or wherever y'all were going next?
My best recollection is that we were there for more than 30 and maybe less than 40. And that was our battalion. And we replaced a battalion and another battalion replaced us. So the siege of Ben Het went on for several months. And everybody got involved. In fact, it was so bad. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard this. It became known as Ben Hit. Because everybody went up there, experienced, getting whacked in some form or other.
Yeah, guys, while there's a lull here before the next questions, there's two really good books. A few of the photos we've seen today was a veteran who was actually at Ben Het during the siege, inside the wire, while Mr. Dave and his men were outside. This book is on, there's the name, I was covering it. This is the complete battle leading up, during, and after. It's very, very good stuff. I want to say that they were getting around 6,000 rounds by the end of incoming rounds. It's just absolutely ridiculous. The B-52 strikes that were going on, it's amazing anything was.
Well, I want to add too that, those rounds, I mean, they were just coming, that is the size of maybe a city block, maybe two. I mean, that's a very small area. This wasn't like, Kandahar airfield where it's, the thing's as big as Long Island practically. I don't know how, but it's big, big city, big, everything's big. These were tiny little outposts, that were taking these much smaller than Quezon. These were tiny outposts that were taking that kind of hit. So I just wanted to put some context to it.
Absolutely. And I'm going to pull up a photo real quick that I had of actually a good flight overview. I believe that's Ben Het. Isn't that Ben Het, sir?
I believe it is. It sure looks like it.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
We got
two hills. We got two hills and then the airstrip. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not a lot of real estate, catching 6,000 rounds of incoming, and then B-52s all on the outside and daily, airstrikes and such as that. I cannot, and a few of the photos will show what it looked like around there, and you can get a little bit of an idea. But another book I recommend you guys getting if you're very interested in the special forces in Vietnam. Mr. Shelby Stanton's book is outstanding. It stands to go. It could do a little more work on the Mike Force and the Mobile Guerrilla Force section, but overall, it's a wonderful history of special forces from 56 to 75 till they literally the last man out. Very, very good stuff. And Mr. David's group is featured in this book as well. But gosh, and I just went blank was what I was about to. Oh, the question right here. This is a great one because we were actually talking about this offline. Anzac Day is tomorrow. And Nick was curious, did you come across any Aussies or Kiwis while you were in the Mike Force?
The answer is yeah. They in 2 Corps, they were with the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd battalions down, and they were in Kontum, strike that. They were in Pleiku, that's where they were headquartered, and I did not encounter them in the field when I was there, but every once in a while I'd go through Pleiku and spend the night and get a drink or two at Big Marty's, and those guys could play cards. They took me for several $100 over the course of my stay there. I never won. I never did. They did, and they did. Aside from that, they did a really good job. I mean, those folks, again, they were senior NCOs. They'd been in counterinsurgency, mobile guerrilla type environments prior to getting to the Mike Force. So they've been used to working with indigenous personnel. They were used to working in mobile, mobile strike force type environments, and certainly combat situations. And they did a great job. They were great allies, and you could always count on them. Always.
Here is an SAS. He was with B-36 out of Longhai. This is Mr. John Deasy, and his SAS counterpart, Aussie, or is it? Yeah, Aussie SAS advisor.
Yeah, those folks came out of the Special Air Service, Australian Special Air Service. And some of them had service, with the Brits, and they were not quite the French Foreign Legion of that ilk, but they came with a lot of different types of experience, but mostly SAS, coming out of Australia.
Wow, that's that I've always found that interesting, the intermingling, and a lot of people don't realize like you said earlier, the Republic of Korea Marines, and then the Aussies, and then some of the New Zealanders, just amazing. So some of the groups that people don't realize.
When they worked for us, they had an in-country unit, and it was formed under the name of Australian Army Training Team Vietnam, AATTV, and they had their own insignias, but that was the unit, but they came from Australian SAS.
And let's see here. I was going to show off a few photos, and we'll be closing it out here. This is, like I said offline, I had seen this photo for quite some time, and I just could not believe it. There you are. How much ammo were you carrying in your barbell? That looks like you've got a ton of magazines in those.
Yeah, we carried as much as we could, and then some. And there I'm carrying, that one's an XM17, so it's a little bit different than the Car 15, but we all carried them, and we made our own shoulder straps and that kind of thing, and kept our smoke grenades, and you can see my canteen, and the little medallion around my neck was a St. Christopher's medal that my girlfriend had sent me, hoping to keep me safe. And so, and there, I've got my Seiko watch on. You can see it dangling down there, and I think I'm holding a cigarette in that hand too. So, I used to smoke in my youth, and probably shouldn't have. But yeah, this was kind of typical. And in fact, I did had an interview with an organization called Veterans Heritage Project, and this picture is in there, and they try to come up with a title for each story, and I had mentioned, I said, yeah, they said, well, when you went to the field, what did you go with, tanks and artillery and that, And I said, no, they just gave us a hat, a pack, and a gun. And that's kind of the way we traveled. I like I say, I kept an extra pair of pants because I figured, and a pair of socks, just because I could always probably get by with, without a shirt or something. But yeah, so it was those BAR belts they were quote custom made. They weren't adjustable. We'd have them fitted to us, so we didn't have to worry about them coming loose or and most of the time wore like little McGuire rigs that we kept all the time. And then up, let me see, I think that one, yeah, you can barely see just behind my neck there's a canister of albumin. So every American carried albumin with them as a blood expander in case they were, had problems. But yeah, so that was pretty basic. I had run out of grenades at the time, so I didn't have any grenades in that picture. We were getting close to being airlifted out of this, and it was the end of our kind of tour around Ben Het. This was a couple of clicks outside of the camp. I'd have to look at a map. I think. Well, I'm not even going to guess because I'd have to look at a map again to figure out where we were. But we were a couple of clicks outside of, and that was. And to the right side of the picture here is we're right on the border. It's right on the border of
Laos.
Right there. It was I can't remember because Laos and Cambodia was like right there. So you could have spit.
I think 6 miles. 6 miles from the base proper.
Yeah, that's where the border was, and then we were in between the border and Ben Het. We were in between the camp there, so we were, 3-4 kilometers, 5 kilometers outside the camp, and that's what we did. And we patrolled that area, trying to interdict, and we tangled with. That's the picture I was looking for. You can see a slit in his pants.
Oh, there we go. Yes, sir.
So they were, and this was on a resupply, and Captain Gabrys was killed about 3 days after this, and was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross.
Stephen Gabrys. Gosh, that's terrible. How you said what would the captain be in that? The XO, CO, or
he was kind of a strap hanger. He wanted to come out with the Mike Force, and I can't remember which. Let's see, what company was he with? I think he was with Second Company early on, but he had been wounded earlier on, and he was coming back, and like I say, he was killed about 3 days later in an action with the North Vietnamese army. Those guys were killers. I mean, they were, these are folks whose cadre, the North Vietnamese, the 33rd and the 66th regiments, their leadership was just, they were seasoned. I mean, they fought the French, they fought the Japanese, boy, they literally took no prisoners. They were an unbelievable adversary. Very, very professional.
That's what people, I try and correct, although at this point, some of the people aren't even worth correcting because you won't ever get through to them. But, they always say it's, Vietnam was nothing but the U.S. military against farmers. I was like, you clearly have not had an education in what they were fighting, because the North Vietnamese was the furthest thing from a peasant army and someone that didn't know what they were doing. I mean,
we came up against tanks. We never we never had to contend with air power, but we did have to. We contended. In fact, it was at Ben Het.
PT-76s, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
God. How'd y'all deal with those things at that time? Did y'all have laws that y'all
Well,
took them out with, or?
well, we had laws, but that was the front end of the introduction. They were just being introduced for the most part,
Oh,
and they didn't work very well. And
mm,
and uh, and a couple of times I'd jump up out of the weeds and oh shit, nothing. And that happened a couple of times. And they just, I mean, they finally found one that worked, but geez, Louise. Boy, that's a
wow.
sinking feeling when you get up, and those things, you got to be fairly close to,
Yeah.
and and all you do is hear the click of the firing mechanism, click, 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 and you're clicking like crazy, and nothing's happening. Oh Jesus! So
Ah,
they did get better as time went on, but well, they were a hit and miss item to begin with.
that is just terrible. I love that picture or painting or is that
Well, it
a
was a picture. That's the way they made color film in Vietnam. This was my bodyguard Dai. I was coming home. This is my dress uniform,
oh,
tigers, and so I was going home. I was on my, getting ready to go home, and I took him downtown. And in one of the pictures early on, you see he doesn't have any teeth in the front. He'd knocked
mm-hmm.
them out, goofing around. He was a goof. Uh, Pretty funny kid, but boy, he didn't think twice about whacking some Vietnamese, north or south. He was into killing them, and but and bless his heart, he saved my life, and so. I was going home, so as a going home present, I bought him a new uniform, got him a haircut, and got him a new set of front teeth, and then we got our pictures taken, and this is it. This is down towards the end of November 1969, and so uh, that's and so yeah, he's about 18, 17 or 18. He'd worked for MACV-SOG, I know, on a couple of for a while. He had a lot of, but he was a clown. I mean, he was just. I mean, it was just. I mean, a clown in a. It was like the class clown. People loved him. He was really good natured. But boy, you put a gun in his hand, you put a Vietnamese in front of it, and they were history. Um, he, he just about cut a. Anyway, he yeah, saved my life. Good kid, a lot of heart. Um, and saw a lot of action.
Jeez. Well, I mean, what a way to leave. I can't imagine what he must have felt and the gratitude. And I know how sad you must have been having to leave
Oh,
him like that.
it was
I can't imagine.
it was difficult. It was one of the most difficult choices I'd ever made. Um, but realistically, um, 3 months later, yeah, about 3 months later, 3.5 months later, that company had just taken overwhelming defeat. Well, they'd been put in an impossible situation, and a lot of them were killed, and they did that a couple of times to those kids, and and so it was not only unfortunate, but it just damn near criminal as far as I'm concerned, because that was suicidal shit. Didn't need to happen.
Wow. I've read there in the books that there are on the Mike Force and the Mobile Guerrilla Forces. I mean, it's unbelievable the stuff y'all are getting into and mixing it up with. I mean, large amounts of NBA. I mean,
Oh,
it gives you pucker factor just reading it in a book. To be quite
yeah,
honest,
yeah, yeah.
God. Um, I'm gonna show this y'all's logo, and then I'm gonna let you share a little bit about your post Vietnam with us. I
Sure.
do love the two core uh, Mike Force logo, and each corps had their own logo.
Yep,
if
they
I'm
did. And I got to tell you that this one was the best one.
I have to agree with
I
you.
mean, seriously, and I mean, I brag on it, but it's the coolest logo that there is of all of them. So I'll just leave it at that, and realize that that's a rather subjective opinion, but I'm going to stand by it anyway. Post post Vietnam, like I say, I went to school, got a degree, graduated with honors, got a degree in political science, went on to be a telecommunications finance guy, did that for 15 18 years, did some things on my own. I even spent a couple of years as an artist in Berkeley, which was lots of fun. And but then after Iraq and Afghanistan, I got home and started getting involved in the veterans community, and so I helped with a couple of monuments. One was a renovation of a World War I monument, and the other was just a general monument to veterans, fairly generic. And so when I got involved with the so I always kind of like to put things out in a little list and whatnot. So I started a small nonprofit called the Arizona Veterans and Military Leadership Alliance, and our focus was to establish Arizona as the most veteran supportive state in the nation. And when I don't use I say never, almost never use the word veteran friendly, because getting a pat on the back and thanking us for our service, which is nice, especially if you came home during Vietnam. I get that, but in the final analysis, it don't feed the bulldog. And so I created the little nonprofit to advocate for what I call the 3 circles of success for veterans. The first one being education and training. Every veterans, particularly coming home after a deployment, need to do that. The second is a good job and economic security. So and the third circle of success is health and wellness. And so those 3 are kind of form my my model for veteran success. And so I've looked at each one of those areas and tried to do something that's meaningful in each one. And so on the education side, having graduated from ASU and whatnot, and I was, in fact, when I first met President Crow, who's the president of ASU, and I approached him, I said, I'm a veteran. I graduated in 1974 on the GI Bill, and I said, I think that if you're serious about veterans and their success here at the university, I've got a model I think that'll work. And so he said, call my office, make an appointment. And he said it very nicely, and I thought, well, that was so easy. I thought maybe he was just blowing me off, just get rid of this guy, But no, a couple of days later, I called the office. Oh yes, Mr. Lucier, we were expecting your call, and we made an appointment. And I went in, and I had my little list, and I said, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. And I said, and I've been down at the legislature, and we've just recently got passed the in-state tuition bill for veterans. And so now any veteran could come to any university, college, university, institute of higher learning, and get the in-state rate, which was huge, because the difference between in-state and out of state was out of reach for veterans on their GI Bill. So we got them inside that, and so we got that passed. And I told him that. I said, so now what we have to do is do something on the inside. And so I handed him this stuff, and I'm thinking, it's going to be 2 or 3 years before all this stuff gets implemented. And he had it all done in about 4 months. And some of the they created a veteran service center called the Pat Tillman Center, and we got a bunch of procedures changed. So, for instance, if there was a problem with the GI Bill, and kids were getting thrown out of school for non-payment, so we got them. They checked the box, and now they'll never get, if they're a veteran, they'll never get thrown out of school for non-payment. The Veteran Service Center has done magnificent work there. They work directly now with the folks at the Education Center in Oklahoma, and so there are very few times that that's what they've improved, and so they get their priority as far as their classes are concerned, and which is again meaningful. And there was a whole bunch of other things, but anyway, that those are probably the 3 most important. And so Arizona State University went from under 1,000 veterans to over 10,000 in a time span of about 5 years, and now they're up over 16,000. And so that's what I mean when I say you can be friendly, you can pat them on the back, you can say, "Hey, welcome to ASU," but until you're ready to put your money where your mouth is, all you're going to do is be somebody I kind of ran into, and so now, and then that model has been adopted by the other 2 state universities, and as well as almost all of the community colleges across the state. So I haven't even counted those guys and those gals at all. And so there's yeah. So those are, so education. We've worked with employers large and small to get people involved in their onboarding process. We've worked with several organizations to improve their process. One of the things that we tried working on for several years was to get the state to give veterans an advantageous, some points in doing business with the state, and our goal was 3%. They rejected us, and now we're at 6% all by ourselves. We just kind of well, so now we're at 6% of those folks. So that's good. We've done good work there. And then on the health and wellness in 2014, our VA hospital was a disaster. Had been sued several times and were successfully sued. And so we had a lot of problems. We were at the bottom of the heap, and just it was horrible. And so myself, other veteran service organizations, members of the community, and a whole boatload of our elected officials, both at the state and federal levels, we got together and said, basically, this is unacceptable. We're not going to take this. We need to make these improvements, and we need to make them now. And within I think 2.5 years, that medical facility went from the very bottom of the heap and to one of the top medical facilities in the state, and one of the top medical facilities in the VA system. And that's where we stand today. And so that health aspect was huge. And we've built out a large system of CBOX, community-based outreach, outpatient clinics. We've got a huge new one, $60 million one that we accelerated by about 10 years. So there are all kinds of stuff that went on to improve that wellness and that health aspect. And so
Amazing.
We built this new Seabach, and I was able to get a beautiful baby grand piano donated, and it sits in the lobby. There's glass and steel entryway, and it's gorgeous. And people come along and, play a little, and so makes people feel good. And so one of the missing links in our health and wellness model was we didn't have a Fisher House here. And a Fisher House, for those that don't know, is like a Ronald McDonald's house for veterans and their families. So if they're come from a long distance or they're families, we give them free boarding, and so they've got all kinds of support mechanisms in a house designed specifically for them and to help with the healing process of their loved ones. And so we worked with the Fisher House Foundation. We worked with the VA and all the VSOs here in the area. And we're probably just a few weeks away from land acquisition, and then we'll move into capital campaign mode. And we'll probably have to raise about $7 million, but I feel certain we can do that. I don't think that's going to be a problem. And then the VA will take it over as part of a line item in their budget. But we created a 501c3 called Friends of Fisher House, and so we will be a supplemental support group for ongoing for the Fisher House and the folks who utilize it. So next big project up will be this is a concept right now, is a large destination veterans and military museum here in the Phoenix area. And so that's I think that'll be my last project. But that's just in the conceptual stage. We've got some people who have expressed interest. Good folks. So we're off to a pretty good start there, but a slow start because we're not in any rush. We have this other initiative to finish and complete, but it always helps to have a little something, in the warehouse. So that's what we're going to do. So that's me. That's my day. In between, I ran a campaign for Tempe City Council and lost, which was. I'm sorry I did. I wish I would have won, but that's life, and I'll continue to try and make things. By the way, I also looked at the local, state, and federal levels, and we're the only municipality in the Maricopa County that has a veteran service director on the city staff.
Oh, wow.
So we're building that out. That's getting, we're doing that. And then I was honored in 2009 to be inducted into the Arizona Veterans Hall of Fame. And I feel very honored about that. So that's amazing. My life.
Wow. And that's a heck of a resume. And I laughed a minute ago when you were talking about Berkeley. And I'll go ahead and say it. And he's also a closeted deadhead, although he's probably pretty open with it. Me and him share our mutual love for the Grateful Dead. As a matter of fact, he was wearing a shirt with the "Still Your Face" logo on it yesterday when we were talking. So that's always funny. Seeing a Mike Force man is a fan of the Grateful Dead here, guys.
It's been a long, strange trip.
Hey, ain't that the truth? We're just gonna keep on trucking. I can't thank you enough for sitting down with us for 2 hours and 15 minutes now. Already getting thank yous coming in. This has been spectacular. Maybe in the future, if you ever want to share anything or get word out about anything, we'd love to have you back on to talk with us. You're an awesome guest, and we love hearing you share and answer questions. So is there anything you'd like to close out with before we shut down?
Just to say thank you for this opportunity, and for anybody out there listening, my best advice is stay connected. Whether it's friends, family, your church, your neighborhood, classmates, veterans organizations, just stay connected and always wake up with purpose. And it could be it could be just the day's purpose, or it could be a long-term purpose. But these are the things that keep us going, and that I always encourage people. Like I say, stay connected, figure out what your purpose is, and pursue it, because that's what helps keep you young, healthy, and strong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Could not have said it better myself. And with that, guys, we are going to call it an afternoon here. I hope y'all have had a wonderful time, because I have. I think we learned a lot. We got some great questions answered, and we learned a lot about a wonderful American, not only in warfare, but he came home and he led a very, very successful life, and he's still leading a very successful life. So without further ado, we're going to shut it down, and we both hope y'all have a wonderful evening, and y'all keep in touch, and we'll see y'all on the stream coming up.
Thank you.